which is seemingly, and I'll title this, Doing the Impossible. And I want to read this quote that was stated by you. It says, "We have a $3.5 billion shortfall." Now this is in Pennsylvania. That represents 20 years of underinvesting in our infrastructure. We, Pennsylvania, need to enact a comprehensive, inflation-sensitive solution, one that builds a strong initial funding source and grows in time to allow Pennsylvania to ramp up its program and address the needs of the Commonwealth. This requires a sustainable revenue source dedicated to transportation. And here's a kicker. Otherwise, we will simply push this problem to the future generations and lose economic competitiveness to states that invest in infrastructure. I read this and I reread this several times. It's powerful. There's a lot in those couple of sentences that you stated. It speaks of the, is it impossible to get this done, plus tied into the fact that we are the Keystone State. I don't know the details, but I-81, what is that, the most traveled truck traffic through our city here in Harrisburg, PA?
It is.
So we are the Keystone State. And and all that speak to, this is a huge deal.
It is, and it's something that when I'm out speaking about this, I always tell people, you should care about this, and you should care about it because it's part of our economic fabric. We are, the history of Pennsylvania, canals, railroads, a lot of our economic history is built around the fact that our geographic location and the natural resources that we have. And today we're developing a new one, Marcellus Shale. How do we build the infrastructure to both develop that resource and then export it so that it can help our economy? There's been coal, there's been, as I said, the canals. Transportation has always been an integral part of our Pennsylvania economy, partly because of our geographic location. You can't get to the Northeast without going through Pennsylvania. And a lot of the nation's population is within driving distance of Pennsylvania. So, for that $3.5 billion gap that we talk about, if you think back about when a lot of this infrastructure was built, back in, especially the road systems back in the 60s when the interstate was built,
right.
Our parents' generation paid about a third of the price of a gallon of gas to build that, to finance it. Over time, we have eroded that down to now we pay less than half of that. We pay less than about 10% of the price of a gallon of gas goes into investing back into the roads and bridges to take care of them. And you mentioned I have, twin that are over 1 year old, Jackson and Jocelyn, by the way, are the names.
Okay, good.
For me, in this role, it's a unique thing to take a perspective and saying, what am I doing while I'm in this role about the next generation? What are my kids going to face if I don't do certain things while I'm in government? And I think for this generation, it's a question of we're not investing nearly as much as the previous generation did to build and now take care of this infrastructure. So for Pennsylvania to be competitive and to safely move people and products through here, are we going to invest, or are we going to say we don't want to spend more, let the next generation pay for it? Now, I've often likened this to when you first start out of college, you frequently have a credit card that you buy stuff with because you can't really afford it, so you borrow the money. And when you make a minimum payment on the credit card and the interest rate's high, the interest grows faster than your minimum payment. That's what we're doing right now on transportation. We're making kind of a minimum payment and we're letting the interest build. And every year that $3.5 billion gap gets bigger. Why? It's a $3.5 billion annual gap. When you don't spend it 1 year, then you defer it. The next year the gap grows to $3.7 billion. The year after that it's $3.9 billion. And so what are you doing? You're pushing that bill to the next generation.
Right.
And in the end, it's going to hurt our competitiveness. And I always say too, all of us make decisions every day about costs. We look at, what should I do? Should I fix my car, or is it at the point where I should replace it? The appliance guy comes and looks at your refrigerator and says it's going to cost $300 to put this part in, and the whole refrigerator costs $500. We all make decisions like that every day. Well, right now in transportation, choosing not to invest costs you. And the reason I say that is if you're driving around a posted weight restricted bridge, if you're a farmer or a business and the bridge is weight restricted because we can't afford to fix it, you're spending fuel to drive around it. That's a cost. If you're sitting in congestion and on a daily basis sitting there for 15 or 20 minutes, the trip's taking you an extra 20 minutes longer than it should, you're wasting fuel, you're burning, that's charging you. It's a cost that you're bearing. If we invested instead, we could fix those problems and reduce that cost. So I think for everybody out there that's concerned about this or interested or just listening to me now, you should be concerned. If you're not, you should be. One, it's about public safety. Two, it's about a generational responsibility and a cost that's simply going to get passed on to the next generation. These are assets, just like the car that you own, the roof on your house. If you don't take care of it, I don't think I would want to turn over my home to my kids and say, as I pass on, here's the property. I did nothing in maintenance to it for 30 years, so here you go. What are you handing them? You know, you're handing them something that's a big cost. You wouldn't want to do that to your children. And to me, that's what we're doing.
Do you think, given the current economic situations and the current shortfalls, of course, I know the vying for these additional funds, do you think that as a country and as individuals, maybe we just can't expect to have a perfectly smooth highway anymore? We've got to live with some discomfort.
Well, you know, I think that's a choice that we ought to all be thinking about. Again, if it's not a smooth highway and if there are bad surfaces, which we're seeing on our roads because of our funding situation, there's a cost built into that. All right? And the cost to you is the cost in wear and tear on your tires and your shocks. And as I said, in congestion, if we're not fixing the problem, we're charging it a different way. We're charging additional fuel consumption. Our report that I chaired the commission on, recommended a series of fee increases that would cost the average driver about $250 a week. Somebody who drives 12,000 miles a year, about $250 a week. That's less than the price of a gallon of gas. If you're sitting in congestion, you're spending more than a gallon of gas a week sitting in congestion every day. So it comes down to an economic decision. And when you say, should we expect less, what's less cost you? And would it cost you less in the long run to fix it? And to me, I think the numbers speak for themselves, that it would be cheaper for everyone if we'd pay a little more now to fix the problem, rather than say, I don't want to pay anything, it's going to cost me more in the long run.
That's a good message. That's an excellent message.